Hello, my name is Zachary Coleman, 30 years old, a firefighter living in Missoula, Montana. If you've never been here, picture endless grasslands, rugged mountain ranges hugging the horizon, and small towns where everyone knows each other's names, from the paperboy to the lady at the grocery store. I was born and raised in a tiny corner of Montana, where poverty clung to my family like a shadow follows light. But don't get me wrong, I'm not telling this story to complain. I'm telling it because I want you to understand. Understand me. Understand what brought me to where I am today. And understand why my heart, though once broken, beats stronger than ever. I'm sitting here in the small room at the fire station, my fingers tracing the rim of a cold coffee mug. The wall clock ticks steadily, mingling with the faint crackle of the radio reporting a quiet day. Rare, I must say. The smell of old smoke lingers on my jacket, a scent I can never fully wash out no matter how many times I try. It's become a part of me, like my childhood memories, my parents, my grandmother, and the days I thought I'd never survive. I grew up in an old wooden house on the outskirts of town, with a patched-up shingle roof and windows that creaked every time the wind blew. My father, Hank Coleman, was a construction worker, always grumbling about his back pain but working tirelessly to bring home money. My mother, Ruth, worked at a nearby sewing factory where the machines hummed from dawn to dusk. Both worked themselves to the bone, but money was never enough. We lived in constant want, our dinners often just bread and stewed beans, with a bit of meat if we were lucky. I remember evenings at the dinner table, the dim yellow light casting shadows on my parents' weary faces and me, a scrawny kid eating quickly to avoid their frequent arguments. I have a younger brother, Logan, 2 years my junior. Logan was the pride of our parents, the golden boy of the Coleman family. He had bright blue eyes, a charming smile, and a confidence I never possessed. My parents poured all their attention into Logan, buying him a shiny new bike when he turned 10, making sure he got a proper education. Meanwhile, at 14, I had to drop out of school to work as a mason's assistant with my father. I don't entirely blame Logan. He was just a kid, and kids don't know how to refuse being spoiled. But every time I saw him pedaling around the neighborhood on his new bike while I trudged along on a rickety hand-me-down from the neighbor's kid, my heart twisted. Not out of jealousy, but from the sting of being overlooked, as if I wasn't truly part of the family. My childhood was a string of long days filled with sweat and dirt. I worked from dawn to dusk, from hauling bricks to delivering goods, anything that brought in a few extra bucks to hand over to my mother. But no matter how hard I tried, my parents' eyes were always on Logan. I vividly remember one time, I must have been 15, when I accidentally broke a bowl, just an old chipped one. My mother yelled at me, "You're always so clumsy. Logan would never do that." I stood there, hands clenched and trembling, fighting back tears. My father didn't even look up from his newspaper. That was the first time I felt invisible in my own home. But in that darkness there was a light. My grandmother, whom I affectionately called Grandma Rose. She lived alone in a small house about 7 miles from ours, a cozy wooden home with a crackling fireplace and the faint scent of ginger cookies filling the air. She was the only one who truly saw me, who truly listened. Whenever my parents scolded me, whenever the world felt like it was crumbling, I'd pedal my beat-up bike down red dirt roads to her house. 7 miles wasn't a short trip for a 15-year-old, but reaching her home always felt like a lifeline. Grandma Rose was a petite woman with snow-white hair, but her eyes blazed like fire. She always wore an old green sweater, winter or summer, and held a steaming cup of tea. She told me stories about her youth, about how she overcame the hardships life threw at her. "Zachary," she'd say in her warm, steady voice, "you don't need to be rich, but you must be rich in kindness. That's the one thing no one can take from you." She taught me how to face difficulties, how to hold my heart steady even when the world turned its back. She was the one who planted the seed of a dream in me, a dream to do something meaningful, to help others, to live a life that mattered. Those afternoons with her were the brightest moments of my childhood. I remember one time at 16, I showed up at her house exhausted after a grueling day of work. I cried, not from physical pain, but because my mother had just told me I'd never amount to anything. Grandma pulled me into her arms, stroking my hair like when I was little, and said, "You're a flame, Zachary. One day you'll blaze and the whole world will see your light." I didn't fully understand her words then, but they carved themselves into my heart, like a promise to myself. When I was 20, I decided to leave home, not out of anger, but because I knew I needed to find my own path. I signed up to become a firefighter, a job Grandma Rose always supported. She said it was work for those with strong hearts, and I wanted to prove her right. I moved to Missoula, started training, and began working at the local fire station. Life wasn't easy. Long shifts, dangerous fires, and nights lying in bed wondering if I was on the right track. But whenever doubt crept in, I thought of Grandma, of her trusting eyes, and I kept moving forward. Being a firefighter isn't just about putting out fires. It's about rushing into danger, putting others' lives above your own. I've saved people, from terrified kids trapped in burning buildings to elderly folks stuck in wrecked cars. Each time I save someone, my heart feels lighter, as if I'm giving back a bit of the light Grandma Rose gave me. But deep down, I still yearn for something I've never had. Recognition from my family, from my parents. I know it's a foolish dream, but it clings to me like the shadow of my childhood. Logan, my brother, is now 18. He didn't go to college, despite my parents pouring all their savings into him. Logan loves partying, showing off, and getting into trouble. I've heard he's gotten into bar fights and totaled my father's car, but my parents still defend him. I don't talk to Logan much, not because I hate him, but because every conversation widens the gap between us. I still love him in the way a brother does, but I know he needs to find his own way. Grandma Rose is now in her 70s, but she's still as strong and optimistic as ever. I visit her often, bringing bread and coffee, sitting and listening to her stories. She still calls me her flame, and every time she does, I feel like I can do anything. When I was 28, I had been a firefighter for nearly 8 years. 8 years facing smoke, flames, and desperate screams. 8 years learning to stay calm when the world seemed to collapse around me. This job isn't just a profession. It's a part of me, like my breath, like my heartbeat. But no day could have prepared me for what happened that afternoon. A fateful day when the fire didn't just test my body, but burned through everything I believed about myself and my family. That afternoon started like any other. I was at the fire station, wiping down the fire truck with a few colleagues. The smell of engine oil mingled with the aroma of coffee wafting from the station's small kitchen. We laughed, teasing each other about who'd win the weekend basketball game. The mood was light, but I always carried a faint tension, like a taut guitar string waiting to be plucked. That's what being a firefighter is like. You never know when the alarm will blare. And then it did, sharp and piercing, cutting through our laughter. "Major fire, Lincoln High School," the dispatcher's voice roared over the radio. My heart pounded. Lincoln High, an old school in the heart of town where hundreds of students were attending classes at that hour. I grabbed my jacket, pulled on my helmet, and jumped onto the fire truck in under 10 seconds. My team, me, Jake, Sarah, and rookie Tommy, raced out of the station, sirens wailing, red lights spinning through the afternoon sun. On the way, the dispatcher updated us via radio. Fire started in the chemistry lab, likely due to an electrical fault. Flames spreading fast, heavy smoke on the second floor. Students and teachers trapped. His voice trembled, a rarity for someone in his line of work. I glanced at Jake, gripping the steering wheel, his face tense. "Zach, you take the lead, all right?" he asked, his voice low but trusting. I nodded, though a surge of adrenaline mixed with fear coursed through me. Leading a fire this big was no small task, but I was trained for moments like this. When we arrived, the scene was a nightmare. Flames erupted from the second floor of the main building, black smoke billowing from shattered windows. Screams from students and teachers echoed from inside, blending with the fire's menacing hiss. A crowd of parents and townsfolk stood beyond the barricades, their faces etched with panic, some sobbing uncontrollably. Police had cordoned off the area, but the cries didn't stop. I took a deep breath, forcing my mind to stay clear. Team 1, check the main entrance. Team 2, prep the hoses. Zach, find a way to the second floor. The chief barked through the radio. I strapped on my oxygen mask, checked my tank, and charged into the building with Sarah and Tommy. The smoke was so thick I could barely see a few steps ahead. The heat was intense, sweat pouring down beneath my gear. The fire roared like a beast, and somewhere I heard faint cries for help. Stay calm, Zach, I told myself, Grandma Rose's voice echoing in my mind. Your flame will light the way. We split up to search the classrooms. Most students had been evacuated, but some were still trapped on the second floor where the fire was spreading fastest. I found 2 teachers and 3 students in a classroom coughing violently from the smoke. I led them to the emergency staircase and handed them off to Sarah to get them out. But as I turned back, Tommy shouted over the radio, Zach, the library! Someone's trapped in the library! The library was at the end of the hallway where the smoke was thickest and flames licked the ceiling. I ran toward it, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it might burst. The library door was shut tight, but through the crack I heard faint coughing and weak calls. I kicked the door open and the sight inside froze me. A girl about 16 lay curled up on the floor near a bookshelf, her face pale, eyes closed. Smoke filled the room and small flames were starting to ignite the books nearby. Kid, wake up! I knelt, shaking her shoulders. She groaned softly, her eyes fluttering open, but she was clearly succumbing to the smoke. I tore off my jacket, wrapping it around her to shield her from the heat, and lifted her into my arms. She was light, but each step felt like it carried 1,000 pounds. The smoke stung my eyes even through the mask. I knew I had to move fast, but the hallway had become an inferno. Suddenly, a loud crack rang out. I looked up just in time to see a heavy burning bookshelf toppling toward us. I shoved the girl out of the way, but couldn't dodge it myself. The shelf slammed into my shoulder and head, a searing pain slicing through me like a knife. I collapsed, my vision spinning as if I were caught in a drunken wave. Don't give up, Zach, I muttered, Grandma Rose's voice ringing again. Gritting my teeth, I crawled to my feet, dragging the girl through the hallway. A burning wooden beam crashed behind us, blocking our way back. Each breath was agony. My arms and back burned, but I didn't stop. I found a window at the end of the hallway and smashed it with my fire axe. Fresh air rushed in and I shouted into the radio, East window, second floor. Someone's trapped. I carefully passed the girl through the window into Jake's arms, who had climbed the rescue ladder. You okay, Zach? He yelled. I didn't answer, my head swimming, my body ready to collapse. I crawled out the window and then darkness swallowed me. When I woke, I was on a stretcher, an oxygen mask heavy on my face. The wail of an ambulance siren and the murmur of voices buzzed in my ears. My head throbbed like it was being hammered, my arms and back stinging. You're awake. Sarah sat beside me, her face a mix of worry and relief. You scared the hell out of us. The girl, how's the girl? I rasped, my voice hoarse. She's fine. Thanks to you. You saved her life, Zach, Sarah said, squeezing my hand. But you're hurt bad. 2nd-degree burns, mild traumatic brain injury. You need rest. I closed my eyes, trying to piece together what had happened. The image of the unconscious girl, the flames, and the crack of the falling bookshelf replayed in my mind like a slow-motion film. I didn't know who she was, but I knew I'd done the right thing. Grandma Rose would be proud, I thought, and a faint smile cracked my lips. I was taken to St. Patrick's Hospital. It was a different world there, the smell of antiseptic, cold white lights, and the relentless beeping of machines. I lay there, my arms and back bandaged, my head aching dully. The doctors said I was lucky. If the bookshelf had been heavier, or if I'd been a few seconds slower, I might not have made it. But I didn't feel lucky. I felt empty, as if the fire had burned away a part of who I was. The first days in the hospital passed in a haze of painkillers and fitful sleep. Each time I woke, I stared out the window where Montana's sunlight slipped through the blinds, illuminating tiny cracks in the wall. I thought about the fire, about the girl, Emma, about the moment I thought I wouldn't make it out. But above all, I thought about my family, my parents, whom I foolishly hoped would come hold my hand and tell me they were proud. I knew it was a pipe dream, but my heart refused to let go. The burns on my arms and back stung with every attempt to move. The doctors said they were second-degree burns, not severe enough to require skin grafts, but enough to keep me in the hospital for a few weeks. The mild traumatic brain injury left my head buzzing, as if a swarm of bees had taken up residence in my skull. I wasn't allowed out of bed except when the nurses came to change my bandages or take me to physical therapy. In those hours, I lay there, staring at the ceiling, trying not to think too much. Sarah and Jake, my colleagues from the fire station, visited often. Sarah brought a box of homemade cookies. "Not as good as your grandma's, but they'll do," she said with a wink. Jake shared stories about the station, about how Tommy the rookie still trembled when talking about the Lincoln High fire. "You're a hero, Zach," Jake said, patting my shoulder gently to avoid my wounds. I gave a weak smile, unsure how to respond. A hero? I just did what any firefighter would do. Grandma Rose came, of course. She arrived on the third day just as I woke from a long sedative-induced sleep. She walked into the room, her familiar green sweater hugging her small frame, her eyes blazing like fire. "My flame," she said, taking my hand, her voice trembling but filled with pride. "You've made me so proud, Zachary." I squeezed her hand, fighting back tears. She told me about the news in the papers, how the whole town was talking about me. "They're calling you a hero," she said, smiling. "But I know you don't need titles. You did it because of your heart." She stayed all afternoon recounting stories of her youth, of how she overcame hardships. I lay there listening, feeling like I was back on those 7-mile bike rides to her house, seeking solace amidst the storm of my childhood. Before leaving, she placed a ginger cookie on the table beside my bed. "Eat it, you need strength," she said, ruffling my hair like when I was a boy. I watched her leave, her small but powerful figure disappearing through the door, and I told myself that as long as I had her, I could get through anything. But my family, my parents and Logan, was a different story. I called my mother on the second day in the hospital, right after the doctors allowed me to use the phone. I lay there, IV dripping into my arm, my voice weak as I recounted the fire, what had happened. "Mom, I'm hurt," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm at St. Patrick's Hospital. Can you come?" There was a long silence on the other end, followed by a sigh. Then she spoke, her voice icy. "Why'd you risk your life for strangers, Zachary?" "So reckless. We're busy dealing with Logan. He got into a fight at a bar, got beat up bad. You take care of yourself there." I heard my father mutter something in the background. Then she hung up. I lay there, the phone slipping from my hand onto the bed. The pain hit me. Not from the burns, not from the buzzing in my head, but from my heart, squeezed tight. I'd known this was coming, had grown used to their indifference, but this time, it still hurt, like a fresh cut on an old scar. I called Logan afterward, thinking maybe he'd care, but he just mumbled, his voice groggy as if I were bothering him. "You okay, bro?" Good. Mom's pissed about my stuff, so, we're kinda busy." I hung up without another word. I stared out the window, the sunlight fading, and felt like that lost kid again, watching Logan ride his shiny new bike while I pushed my rickety one. The following days in the hospital were a blur of physical and emotional pain. The nurses changed my bandages, each peel of the old dressings making me grit my teeth to keep from screaming. The burns on my back and arms were red and blistered, and though the doctors said they'd heal, I couldn't help but think of the scars that would stay forever. The head injury made it hard to focus, and sometimes memories of the fire flooded back, so vivid I could feel the smoke choking my lungs. But what hurt more than anything was the silence from my family. I waited day after day, hoping for a call, a text, or any small sign they cared. Nothing. I wondered if they'd read the papers, heard the news about me. The whole town was talking about the fire, about the hero firefighter, yet my parents, the ones who should have been closest, chose to turn their backs. One afternoon, as I struggled through physical therapy, trying to lift a small weight that felt like the world, the nurse handed me a phone. "Someone's calling for you, Zachary," she said softly. My heart raced, a spark of hope flaring. Was it Dad? Mom? Logan? I took the phone, my voice trembling. "Hello?" "Zachary, it's me." Grandma Rose's warm voice came through like the crackle of her fireplace. I smiled but couldn't hide my disappointment. She told me the town was organizing a fundraiser for Lincoln High and wanted me to speak once I was better. "You're Missoula's pride," she said. I thanked her, but when I hung up, the emptiness returned. She was my light, but I couldn't stop craving a flicker of warmth from my parents. One day, around the second week in the hospital, a nurse knocked on my door. "Zachary, you have a visitor," she said, her voice hesitant, as if holding back a secret. I sat up, smoothing my messy hair, my heart pounding with the foolish hope it was my parents. But when the door opened, it wasn't them. A tall man in a sharp black suit walked in, accompanied by an elegant woman in a pale blue dress. Behind them was a young girl. I recognized her instantly, the girl I'd saved from the fire. Her striking blue eyes and blonde hair tied high were unmistakable, though she looked far healthier now than the frail figure in the smoke-filled library. "Hello, Mr. Coleman," the man said, his voice warm but authoritative. "I'm Edward Harrington. This is my wife, Margaret, and our daughter, Emma." He extended his hand and I shook it, still a bit stunned. Harrington? The name sounded familiar, but my foggy head couldn't place it. Emma stepped forward, holding a small gift box wrapped in blue paper with a gold ribbon. "Thank you, Zachary," she said, her voice trembling. "If it weren't for you, I don't know if I'd be here." She bowed her head, cheeks flushing, and handed me the box. "It's not much, but I hope you like it." I opened the box to find a simple leather bracelet engraved with the word courage. I smiled, slipping it onto my wrist, feeling an odd connection to this girl. "Thank you, Emma," I said, my voice hoarse. "I was just doing my job. I'm glad you're okay." Mr. Harrington looked at me, his eyes filled with admiration. "No, Mr. Coleman, you didn't just do your job," he said. "You put your life on the line to save my daughter. We owe you a debt we can never repay." Margaret nodded, her eyes glistening. "Emma is everything to us," she said. "Thank you, from the bottom of our hearts." I shifted uncomfortably, unused to such gratitude. "I didn't think much about it," I said, scratching my head. "I just wanted to get her out safely." Mr. Harrington smiled, but his eyes were serious. "You're a remarkable man, Zachary. When you're fully recovered, come by my office, all right? I'd like to talk more." He handed me a business card, and I took it, still unsure of the significance of this visit. They left soon after, leaving me with the bracelet, the card, and a mix of awkwardness and curiosity. One evening, as I struggled to sleep, the nurse knocked again. "Zachary, another visitor," she said. My heart leapt. I sat up, smoothing my hair, clinging to the faint hope it was my parents. But when the door opened, it wasn't them. It was a reporter from a local paper wanting an interview. I declined, saying I was tired. And the disappointment clung to me like a shadow that never left. I kept hoping my parents would visit, only to be met with frustration and sadness when they never came. Not even a missed call or a single word of concern. In my final days at the hospital, I began to recover. The burns started to heal, though they left angry red scars. My head ached less, and I could walk without help. But the wound in my heart, the indifference of my family, still smoldered like a fire that never fully died. Grandma Rose visited the day I was discharged. She brought a bouquet of wildflowers from her garden, their scent reminding me of peaceful afternoons with her. "You've done something great, Zachary," she said, holding my hand. "But remember, you did it for yourself, for your heart, not for anyone else." I nodded, but inside I still felt a void. I knew she was right, but I also knew my journey wasn't over. Mr. Harrington's business card sat in the drawer beside my bed next to Emma's bracelet. I didn't know where that meeting would lead, but I felt a change coming, like a new wind blowing across Montana's fields. The day I was discharged from the hospital, the Montana sky was crystal clear, with golden sunlight streaming through the pine trees lining the road back home. "Time to go home, my flame," Grandma Rose said, holding my hand as I stepped out of the hospital, my legs still shaky from days of immobility. I hugged her, feeling the warmth of the small woman who had always been my guiding light. In my pocket, I carried Mr. Harrington's business card and the bracelet engraved with courage that Emma had given me. They were reminders that even though my own family had turned their backs, there were still people who valued me. I returned to my modest apartment in Missoula, a simple place with worn furniture and a framed photo of me and Grandma Rose on the table. The burn scars on my arms and back still stung, but the doctors said I could return to work after a few months of rest and recovery. I wasn't in a hurry. Firefighting was part of me, but the Lincoln High fire had left a deeper mark than any flame I'd ever faced. I needed time to understand it, to understand myself. In the days that followed, I spent most of my time at Grandma Rose's house. We sat on her porch, sipping coffee and watching wild horses gallop across the distant fields. She told me about the neighbors, about how the town was still buzzing about the fire, about the thank you letters from Lincoln High parents sent to the fire station. "You did something great, Zachary," she said, her eyes sparkling. "But I know you didn't do it for fame. You did it because of your heart." I smiled, but my heart felt heavy. I thought about my parents, about Logan, about my mother's cold words over the phone. I hadn't called back, and they hadn't reached out either. Part of me wanted to forget them, to cut the invisible thread tying me to old wounds. But another part, the weaker part, the 15-year-old boy who biked 7 miles to Grandma Rose's house, still yearned for a shred of their love. About a month after leaving the hospital, I decided to visit Edward Harrington's office. His business card had been sitting on my dining table next to a cold cup of coffee. It was a simple card, bearing only his name, phone number, and an address in downtown Missoula. No title, no company logo, but the thick paper and crisp ink gave it an air of a world I'd never touched. I called ahead, my voice hesitant. "Hello, Mr. Harrington, this is Zachary Coleman. You said I should come by when I was better." "Zachary!" His voice boomed through the phone, warm but commanding. "Are you feeling better? Great. Can you come by my office this afternoon at 3? We have a lot to discuss." I agreed, though curiosity and nerves churned inside me. What did Mr. Harrington want? Another thank you? Or something I couldn't yet imagine? I put on my only intact blue shirt, pulled a baseball cap over my still messy hospital hair, and drove my old pickup truck to the address on the card. Mr. Harrington's office was in a sleek, modern glass building in downtown Missoula, a stark contrast to the dusty streets and wooden houses I knew. A young receptionist smiled and led me down a marble-floored hallway to a spacious office. Mr. Harrington stood from behind a large wooden desk, shaking my hand with a genuine smile. "Zachary, thank you for coming," he said, gesturing to a leather chair across from him. "Sit down. Coffee? Water?" "Coffee, thank you," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. I glanced around, noting the abstract paintings on the walls and a large window overlooking the distant mountains. Everything here radiated wealth, but not ostentatiously. A quiet sophistication I'd never seen in anyone from town. Mr. Harrington sat down, looking at me with a mix of appraisal and friendliness. "Are you fully recovered?" he asked, his tone genuinely concerned. "I know you were badly hurt saving my daughter." "Still sore, but I'm okay," I said, touching the bracelet Emma gave me. "Thank you for asking." He nodded, then fell silent for a moment, as if weighing his words. "Zachary," he began, his voice lowering, "I want you to know that my family owes you an immense debt. Emma, she's our everything. If it weren't for you, I don't know how we'd go on." I shook my head, feeling awkward. "I was just doing my job, sir. Any firefighter would have done the same." "No, not everyone would," he said firmly. "You ran into that fire despite the danger. That's not just a job. That's courage, that's heart." He paused, locking eyes with me. "I looked into your background. A young man who grew up in hardship, working from a young age to support your family. You didn't have much, but you gave everything to save others. That's rare, Zachary." I looked down, unsure how to respond. His words reminded me of Grandma Rose, of what she taught me about kindness. But I still didn't understand what he wanted. "Thank you," I said, my voice hoarse, "but I didn't do it expecting anything in return." "I know," Mr. Harrington said, smiling, "and that's why I want to do this." He slid a thick envelope across the desk, placing it in front of me. "This is a gift from our family. Not to repay you, no gift could do that, but to help you start anew, to have a better life." I stared at the envelope, my heart racing. I opened it, my hands trembling. Inside was a check. $5 million. I sat there, stunned, as if the world had stopped. $5 million. A sum larger than any dream I'd ever had. I looked up at Mr. Harrington, searching for words. "Sir, I can't accept this," I stammered. "It's too much. I didn't do it for money." He raised a hand, signaling me to stop. "Zachary, I know you didn't do it for money, but think of it this way. You gave Emma a chance to live, and we want to give you a chance to live the life you deserve. You can do so much with this. For yourself, for those you love, for the community. It's your choice." I held the check, my hands still shaking. I thought of Grandma Rose, her little house with its patched roof, the days I worked myself to exhaustion for a few bucks. I thought of my parents, of Logan, of the scars, both on my body and in my heart. This money could change everything, but it also scared me. I feared it might change me, make me forget what Grandma Rose had taught me. "Thank you," I finally managed, my voice choked. "This gift, it's overwhelming." Mr. Harrington nodded, his eyes understanding. "Take your time, Zachary. I know you're a good, strong man. I believe you'll do meaningful things with it, just as you saved my daughter." He stood, shaking my hand again. "And Zachary, if you ever need anything, call me. Our door is always open to you." As I left the office, my mind was a storm. I drove home, the check heavy in my pocket like a secret. I didn't tell Grandma Rose right away, not because I didn't trust her, but because I needed time to process my feelings. I pulled over by a field, turned off the engine, and sat there, watching the sun set behind the mountains. Grandma Rose's words echoed. "You don't need to be rich, but you must be rich in kindness." This check could help me do so much, but would it make me happier? News of the fire and my actions continued to spread. The papers called me Missoula's hero, and I started receiving letters from strangers, parents, students, even firefighters from other states. They thanked me, called me an inspiration, but I didn't feel like a hero. I was just Zachary, a firefighter trying to find meaning in what I'd done. I thought a lot about my parents in those days. Part of me wanted to call them, to tell them about the check, to see their reaction. But I was afraid they'd only care about the money, not me. I remembered my mother's cold voice calling me reckless for risking my life, my father's indifference, Logan's apathy, and I decided not to call. Not yet. A few days later, I visited Grandma Rose. I told her about the meeting with Mr. Harrington, about the $5 million check. She listened, her eyes bright but unsurprised. "Zachary," she said, placing a hand on my shoulder, "you deserve that gift, and I know you'll use it wisely." I nodded, feeling a weight lift as I shared with her. "What do you think I should do?" I asked. She smiled, ruffling my hair like when I was a boy. "Do what makes you feel alive, Zachary." In the days that followed, I started thinking about the future. The check sat in a small safe at home, but it haunted me. I thought about buying Grandma Rose a new house, about starting a fund to help struggling workers as she'd taught me. I thought about Emma, the Harringtons, and how they'd changed how I saw the world. And I thought about my family, people I still loved, even if they'd never loved me the way I needed. After a week of reflection, I decided it was time to act. I couldn't let the check sit in the safe forever, a constant reminder of what I hadn't dared to face. I took it out, carefully folded it, tucked it into my jacket pocket, and drove to the largest bank in Missoula, First Interstate Bank, where I'd opened an account when I started as a firefighter. It was a Wednesday, the air bitterly cold, my breath turning to mist as I stepped out of the truck. I pulled my baseball cap low, not wanting to be recognized, though news of the fire still lingered in the papers. Inside the bank, the air was warm but carried the scent of paper and ink. I joined the line, hands in my pockets, feeling the check beneath the fabric. When my turn came, I approached the counter where a young teller with her hair tied high smiled at me. "Hi, how can I help you?" she asked cheerfully. "I'd like to deposit a check," I said, my voice hesitant, sliding the check across the counter. She picked it up, her eyes scanning the amount, then widening. She looked at me, then back at the check as if she couldn't believe what she saw. You're Zachary Coleman, aren't you?" she asked, her voice trembling. "The firefighter who saved that girl in the Lincoln High fire?" I nodded, a bit awkward. "Yeah, that's me." Her smile grew, a mix of admiration and curiosity. "Just a moment, please. For this amount, I need to get the manager." She hurried to an office in the back. I stood there, sensing the eyes of a few people in the bank turning toward me. An older man nearby whispered to his companion, and I caught the word hero faintly. The bank manager, a middle-aged man in a gray suit, emerged with the teller. He shook my hand, his tone formal yet warm. "Mr. Coleman, it's an honor to meet you. We've read about you in the papers. I'll handle this transaction personally." He led me to a private room where I signed some papers and listened as he explained the security protocols for such a large transaction. $5 million, he said, lowering his voice. "A gift from the Harrington family, correct?" I nodded, not wanting to delve into details. "Yes, they wanted to thank me." "A well-deserved gift," he said, smiling. "But I'm guessing you didn't do it for the money, did you?" I gave a faint smile, not responding. When I left the bank, my account held an additional $5 million, but I didn't feel different. I was still Zachary, still wearing my old jacket, still driving my beat-up truck, still carrying the pain of a child abandoned by his family. News of the check spread faster than I expected. I don't know how the press found out. Maybe the teller, maybe someone from Mr. Harrington's office. Just days later, a local paper ran a story headlined, "Missoula Hero Receives $5 million from Tycoon Family." The article recounted the fire, my actions, and the gift from the Harringtons, though it didn't reveal Emma's identity. The Harringtons, as I came to learn, were a wealthy but private family, owning numerous real estate and agricultural businesses across Montana. They rarely appeared in the media, but their gesture toward me had become the talk of the town. Missoula buzzed with the news. I got calls from colleagues, neighbors, even strangers. They congratulated me, asked what I'd do with the money, and some joked I should replace my old iron horse of a truck. I laughed, but inside I felt pressure. The money wasn't just an opportunity, it was a burden. I feared I wouldn't use it right, that I'd disappoint Grandma Rose. Then, as I dreaded, my family resurfaced. 2 days after the article, my phone rang. It was Mom. I stared at the screen, my heart racing but not with joy. I took a deep breath and answered. "Hello, Mom." "Zachary?" Her voice came through unnaturally sweet. "Are you doing okay? I heard you got a big gift from that rich family. $5 million, right?" I gripped the phone, a weight pressing on my chest. "Yeah," I said coldly. "How'd you know?" "Oh, the whole town's talking about you." She laughed, but I heard the falseness in her voice. "Your dad and I are so proud. You did something big, Zachary. Why didn't you tell us?" I bit my lip, holding back the words I wanted to unleash. Proud. They hadn't visited me in the hospital, hadn't called when I nearly died. But now, with money in the picture, they were suddenly proud. "I've been busy," I said flatly. "What's this about?" "Well, I just thought, you know, our family's not exactly well off. Logan's in a tough spot, needs money to pay off debts and start over. I figured you could share a little, help your brother. Family comes first, right?" I stayed silent, my heart constricting. Family comes first? Those words sounded alien from the woman who called me reckless while I lay in the hospital. "I'll think about it," I said, hanging up before she could say more. That evening, Dad called. He was less talkative than Mom, but his voice was equally unnatural. "Zachary, your mom told me about the money. What are you planning to do with it? Your mom thinks we should buy a new house for the whole family. Logan needs a stable place too. Son, you're the older brother. You've got to look out for him." I clenched my fist, nails digging into my palm. "Dad, I haven't decided anything yet," I said, keeping my voice steady. "But if I do something, it'll be for the people who actually care about me." He went quiet, then muttered something about me being ungrateful. I hung up, a mix of anger and pain surging inside. They didn't care about me, never truly had. They saw the money, and I, once again, was just a means to their ends. Logan was the last to reach out. He sent a brief text. "Bro, heard you hit the jackpot. Congrats, can you help me out? I'm in a bind." I stared at the message, feeling a twinge of pity. Logan wasn't bad, not entirely. He'd been spoiled by our parents, swept into troubles he didn't know how to escape. I wanted to help him, but not the way they wanted. I replied, "When you're ready to talk seriously, call me." Then I turned off my phone. I visited Grandma Rose that weekend, bringing a fresh loaf of bread and a jar of coffee. She sat on her porch, looking at me with eyes that seemed to read my every thought. "You're having trouble with your family, aren't you?" she asked, not needing me to speak first. I nodded, telling her about the calls from Mom, Dad, and Logan. She listened without interrupting, nodding slowly. When I finished, she placed a hand on my shoulder. "Zachary, you don't owe them anything," she said firmly. "You've given them everything, your love, your sacrifice. If they can't see your worth, that's their fault, not yours." I looked at her, feeling a bit of relief. "But I still want to help Logan," I said. "He's my brother." She smiled. "Then help him your way, not theirs. You have a big heart, Zachary. Don't let them take advantage of it." In the days that followed, I started making plans. I wanted to use the money meaningfully, as Grandma Rose had said. I used part of it to buy a comfortable house on a small hill in Missoula's outskirts, overlooking a valley. It was a wooden home with a red-tiled roof, large windows, and a garden big enough for Grandma Rose to plant wildflowers. I invited her to live with me, and she agreed instantly, her eyes sparkling at the sight of the garden. "This is the place I've always dreamed of," she said, holding my hand. "But you, Zachary, are my real home." We moved in on a spring day when wildflowers began blooming across the fields. I bought a few horses, adopted a rescue dog I named Ember, and we started a new life. Each morning I woke up, brewed coffee for Grandma, and we sat on the porch watching the sunrise. Ember lay at my feet, tail wagging gently, and I felt a simple joy I'd never known. With the remaining money, I founded the Rose Coleman Fund, named after Grandma, to support low-income workers injured on the job. The fund covered medical bills, provided financial aid, and offered job training for those who could no longer work. Firefighters, construction workers, factory employees, farmers. I worked with lawyers and financial advisors recommended by Mr. Harrington, ensuring the money was used wisely. Each thank you letter from a family we helped made the flame in my heart burn brighter. I stayed in touch with the Harringtons. Emma visited occasionally, sharing stories about school and her dream of becoming a journalist. She called me her big brother, and I felt a special bond with her. Mr. Harrington became a mentor, not just for finances, but for living with purpose. "You're doing it right, Zachary," he said during one meeting. "You're making a difference, not just for yourself, but for the community." Logan, after months of silence, finally called. He apologized, his voice hesitant but sincere. "Zach, I've been living all wrong. I want to change, to do something good like you." I enrolled him in a job training program supported by my fund, and for the first time I saw a spark of hope in my brother's eyes. I don't know if Logan will truly change, but I hope with time he'll find his own path, as I did. My new life isn't perfect, but it's whole. Each day I wake up beside Grandma Rose, Ember, and Montana's vast fields. I feel alive, truly alive, and that's the greatest gift I could ever receive. I sit here on the porch watching the sunset paint the Montana Valley gold. Ember lies at my feet. Grandma Rose is watering flowers in the garden, and I think about the journey that brought me here. My life isn't a fairy tale, but it's a story of kindness, resilience, and rediscovering my own worth. If you asked me for advice, I'd tell you this: live with an open heart, but don't let anyone take advantage of your kindness. Set boundaries with those who hurt you, even if they're family. And find joy in the simple things: a morning with someone you love, a smile from someone you've helped, or a quiet moment in nature. Life doesn't promise to be easy, but it's always worth fighting for. I look at Grandma Rose holding a wildflower, smiling at me from across the garden. Ember wags her tail and my heart feels warm. I've walked through fire, both literally and figuratively, and I've found a home, not just in the wooden house on the hill, but in my own heart. I hope you find your home too, no matter how long or hard the road may be.